Dan King is here to run the show. It's Dan King, you should already know. Dan King is gonna run the show. Oh yeah, listen up now, here we go. Dan King, he is the king of the empire, the chief, the leader. He's here to take you higher. He brings the heat. All hail the Game Boy geek. Dan King is here to run the show. Oh yeah, you should already know. It's Dan King, and it's the top one.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. It's my top 100 games of all time. Today we're looking at numbers 40 through 31, so let's get started. My number 40 is a spin-off, the second and only spin-off of a popular game called Power Grid. This is Power Grid Factory Manager. Now this is a 60-minute game that it's 2 to 5 players. It doesn't feel as similar to Power Grid as the one I talked about earlier in my list, which was First Sparks. This one's quite different. There is some auctioning going on between the players, but it feels different from the Power Grid auction. And then the rest of the game really feels quite different. So this is kind of a standalone game. They gave it the Power Grid sort of label and thematic branding, but it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with it, but it is still a very good game. In this game, you're trying to figure out, do I have people? Do I have robots? Do I have these other efficient ways to run my power plant? And you're trying to fill up your factory so that's as efficient as possible, because you only get a score as good as how much you can produce versus how much storage you have for that stuff. So you're constantly trying to balance how much do I produce versus how much can I store, and you're always a third part of that triangle is how much energy am I using. I'm trying to get the most production and the most storage, have them as equal as possible by using the least amount of energy as possible, because energy costs rise as the game goes on. It's just a very interesting economic game. The auctioning is very interesting, trying to bring things down and then possibly to bid on to bring them down to get those. And you're building up your little tableau on your board. It's a very thinky game, but one I like quite a bit because of that balancing and efficiency aspect. Number 39 is a social deduction game, similar to The Resistance you may have heard of, or One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Those are two popular ones in that genre. This is called Mayday Mayday. This is a European release. It's from Quali. Now I talked to the publisher and they said that they will be, after Essen, Fun Again Games, funagain.com will be carrying this again after Essen. They're going to bring some copies back because they're out of stock. It's the only place in the US I know that you can get this. This is a social deduction game where essentially there's a couple of bad infiltrators and then the rest of the people are good. And through the game and through social deduction and seeing what people are doing, you're trying to figure out who's the bad and who's the good. As the game goes on, each person's going to get to look at one of 3 cards in front of somebody, and from those 3 cards, there's going to be either 2 bad and 1 good, or 1 bad and 2 good. And the majority tells them whether they're good or bad. And as people start looking at things, they can put what they saw. The good people have to tell the truth, the bad people can lie. So you have this information coming out, but you don't know whether the information you're seeing is true or false until you get to see it. And you're trying to convince people that what you saw is true. And as the game goes on, it comes layers upon layers, and you get to see more things and do different things. And then you finally get to, you put people in the cockpit and they have to be good, and then that person gets to pick someone else to bring in the cockpit. And you've got to get it so all good people in the cockpit. If even one bad person gets there, the game over. It is a very tense, very awesome, one of my favorite social deduction games. This is a diamond in the rough. Mayday Mayday. My number 38 is a family-ish style Euro game. It's for 2 to 5 players where you're trying to build your own restaurant here. Ristorante Italia. This is a very interesting game because I love the theme. It's different, and what you're trying to do is in your restaurant you're trying to create cool recipes. So on your turn, you're going to the market and you're grabbing different things. You're grabbing different recipes from first course, second course, dessert, things like that, and you're trying to see which recipes you want to build. The harder ones that require more ingredients are worth more points, but they take longer to do. So you have that there. Sometimes you're wiping things out of a complete market and bringing new ingredients in to try to get what you need. So at the end of the round that you're trying to complete as many recipes as you can, because the person who has the most at the end of each round gets to move up on the cook track, which allows them to do better and harder recipes earlier than everybody else, which then allows them to get more points. So there's one aspect of building the recipes. There's another aspect of economics where you can try to go the money route, because at the end of each round, you're going to try to entice some VIP people and show them some money, and whoever bids the highest gets them. So there's some hidden bidding going on there. There's a family game, which is basically that. And then there's also an advanced game which adds a lot more decisions. The advanced game, always play with gamers. The other one, play with first-timers or families. I love it when games do that. So it's a good, fun experience. You're also trying to match wine with recipes and match also. It's just awesome. Great game, fun game. Has an easy version, a hard version. Awesome. Ristorante Italia and a fun theme. Great artwork, awesome components. My number 37 is a new game, actually. It's one of the newer ones on my list. It came out at Gen Con. It's called Lords of Ziddit. Now this plays 3 to 5 players. I recommend playing with 4 or 5, but it's still a great game. So in this game, it's a programming game. So you're trying to program up to 6 actions. Everyone programs at the same time, hidden. Then they flip it over and everyone goes in a circle and does their action 1, 2, 3. And they interact with each other like any programming game that's great like this. So what's going to happen is you're trying to go and recruit people like peasants and archers and things like that to go to different parts on the board to fight off monsters. And this is not a theme that I typically like, the fantasy theme, but I really like this. This was based on an older game called Himalaya, but they streamlined it, did some different things with the rules. Even though the fantasy theme's there and you're killing monsters and stuff, I love the mechanics of this so much that this is a hugely high game. So you're going, and it's fun how you think someone's going to do something and they don't, or they do something you don't expect them to, and it thwarts your whole plan for that round. You're like, oh, it's kind of cool how all that works together. And then finally, this last scoring mechanic is there's 3 different scoring tracks that you're working on, and they're randomly assigned at the beginning of the game. And the first track, you don't have to be the best, but whoever's the last is automatically out of the game. Then you go to the second scoring track. Whoever's left, the last one's out. Then you go to the last scoring track, whoever's the last one's out. So you never have to have the most of anything. You just have to be better than the person who's still there. And I think that's awesome. Lords of Ziddit. My number 36 is a game that I used to hate, actually. But after 3 or 4 more plays, I actually really like this a lot. It's Seven Wonders. Was part of the Kinderspiel in 2011. The thing is cool, so it plays up to 7 players, and even with 7 players it takes like 25-30 minutes to play, so it scales well with the people. This is a game where you're sort of collecting, and it's a card drafting game where there's 3 major rounds and you're getting cards and you're figuring out which card do I want to keep, and I'm going to pass it around and they're going to keep coming around. And you're trying to build strategies, whether you're building up military to hurt the people just next to you, you're building up technology maybe. There's all different scoring tracks that you can go, so you're devising a strategy based upon the cards that come. And then subsequent rounds help, the cards that come up, you can be helped by what you played in an earlier round. Some of these cards kind of like give you a strategy and they help you continue to go down that strategy, which is what I really like about this game, because there's a lot of ways to skin a cat and there's a lot of depth here. It's pretty simple, it's quick, and it plays with a lot of players, and it's a very good drafted game for gamers. Very enjoyable, Seven Wonders. My number 35 is another fantasy game, which I typically don't like, but it's an area control game called Small World. Now, I don't like Risk. I don't think I ever really liked Risk. But this, if you do, I don't know, this game totally replaced Risk for me, even though I didn't really like Risk. But it's that game where you're fighting over areas, but the combat is so simple. And I really like this game because it has a scalable board. So there's a different board for every different amount of players you're playing with. And the coolest part about this game is there's a bunch of different races and a bunch of different powers. In every game, those are completely randomized. So different races will get matched up with different powers. So every game feels different. You got to look at which combination looks the best. And then when you hire some of these guys, you can, if you're getting someone that's further back, you have to pay more money to the other ones, which makes it more enticing for other people to get. That mechanism is awesome. And just the way and how easy it is to control areas and the way that the combat works, it's a very simple game to teach, but it's really fun to kind of like mess with people and team up on other people during some times and then go for somebody else during another time. And then the coolest thing also is that like 2 or 3 times during the game, you're going to decline that race and you're going to get a new one. So you end up with a 2 or 3 different races during the game with these different powers. Makes it nice and fresh. It's only like 9 or 10 rounds long, depending on how many players you're playing with. Plays in an hour or less, and it's just a really fun, really great game. My number 34 is a racing game. Racing games typically have dice, I think, or that's what you typically think of, but this does not. This game is a pirate racing game called Jamaica. Wow, artwork in this game is off the charts. Components are awesome. The way it's played is essentially you have a hand of cards. You basically have a few to choose from in your hand. Someone's going to roll, the captain's going to roll a die. There is some dice involved. And they're going to say which one goes first. You know, a 5 and then a 6. And then you look at your cards, and each of your cards has, you know, a left side and a right side. He said 5 is on the left side, 6 is on the right side, and you get to choose which of these two cards, you know, few cards am I going to use to go. And so there's some decision making. It's not always just luck. Sure, the dice brings some luck into it, but it's really cool because you got to decide whether to move and where to move to, because when you move to other people, you can attack them. And there's gunpowder that you can get during the game, and you can add those to a fight. And if you hit them, you can steal a treasure, and you can go a long way around the route to try to get these treasures. Some of the treasures are great. Some of them give you special powers. Some of them give you points. Some of them are cursed and give you negative. So you could then later on go and land on somebody and blow them up. And you can steal a treasure from them, but it might be a bad one, and that's always funny. So there's different decisions. Do I want to go the long route to try to get treasures? Or do I want to go the short route because it's a racing game, you're trying to win? And the decisions to make are simple, yet there's still enough depth there. Great family game, still great with gamers. Plays in 60 minutes or less, plays up to 6 players, and it's just a blast. One of my favorite racing games, Jamaica. My number 33 is a game that won Game of the Year, Spiel des Jahres in 2003. It's a very popular classic called Alhambra. Now in this game, let's see, yeah, 45 to 60 minutes, plays up to 6 players. I like it better with like the 3 or 4 player count. In this game, you're trying to build your own Alhambra mansion. And it's cool because there's a bidding mechanism where there's 4 different currencies you have in the game, of different colors essentially, and you're trying to buy these different types of buildings, and there's a bunch of different types of buildings in the game. And when you pay for buildings, if you can pay with exact change, you get to go again a second turn right away, which is a very interesting and fun mechanism. Then once you have bought the building, you place it on your Alhambra, and you're constantly, it's like its own little puzzle where you're trying to make it nice and neat, and you're trying to make sure this long wall around your Alhambra goes all the way around, because you get points for that. And another interesting thing about this is the scoring. So 3 times during the game, scoring will happen. And basically, whether you're first, second, or third place in each of these buildings will tell you how many points you get. So you're looking at your board and what's out there, and you're looking at other players' boards, and you're like, he's second in that very good building. There's one out there. I can get it, put it there, get first place. So you're constantly looking at what other people have and what you have and what the smartest thing to do. It's simple, it's easy to teach, but there's enough depth there, good family-style game. It's just an excellent, excellent classic game to play, Alhambra. My number 32 is a family-style pick up and deliver game. It's from Rio Grande Games. It's called, well, the subtitle is 5 Villages. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name because I always butcher it, but there it is right there. In this game, you are trying to move around the different places in the hills to grab produce. So you're grabbing fruits and vegetables, and then you're going around and dropping them off for orders and getting money for those at one of the 5 different villages. And so on your turn, it's very easy. There's a few things you can do. You're grabbing stuff, you're selling stuff. There's a good amount of open information in the game, meaning what orders are out there for people to try to get, so everyone sees what people are hunting for. You can also see what other people have in their cart, so you can try to see what people might be going for, and they're going to get there before me. And when you sell things, new orders come out, plus you also have an ability to take it and get a hidden goal as well. And so there's a good balance between open and shared information and some hidden information, so you never quite know exactly where everybody sits in the scoring path. There's also some ways that you can get some end game goals, whereby if you're the first person to sell a certain amount of stuff at each of the villages, you get an end game goal. So there's lots to think about. I like it because it plays in about an hour. It's simple to teach. The moves themselves are simple, but there's a lot of depth there as to figuring out what should I do, what are other people doing, and what hidden information do I not know about. So it's a really good game. It's colorful. The components are great, and it's just a really fun pick up and deliver family style game that's deeper than the nice colorful artwork will lead off to. All right, the last one for this video, number 31, is a puzzly type game. This is a game where you're moving different people around a board. It's called Mutant Meeples from BZA Games. It plays up to 7 people, 2 to 7 people. And it's really interesting with this game is essentially a location will come out, and the board is set up like a grid. It might be like K7, and you put a target there, and immediately everybody tries to figure out, there's a bunch of superheroes on the board, and each of them has a special ability on how they can move. Otherwise, they just run straight until they hit a wall and they can move. But some of them have special abilities, and the first person to get to that location flips over a sand timer, and everybody else has the rest of that time in real time to try to get there. Whoever gets there in the least amount of moves gets the point, and then that player now flips over the person that got there, and they can no longer use them anymore because they're now part of their superhero team. So I love this mechanism because as the game goes on, there's going to be someone that takes a quick lead, but then their options dwindle down because there's everyone that they've gotten it with, they can no longer use. And so there's this thing where someone takes a lead and people catch up. There's a lot of, it always ends up being a close, tight game towards the end. And you know, where they come out is random, and where the people are always end up changing because people will move stuff. I really love it. If you like puzzles and puzzly type games, this is one of my favorite puzzly games, Mutant Meeples.
take you higher. He brings the heat. All hail the Game Boy geek. Dan King is here to run the show. Oh yeah, you should already know it's Dan King, and it's the top 100 boy.